you, Michael. Good to see that I got the controversial session. We're now going to sort of Kyle. Natalie's on the. I think Natalie's online, is she? Yeah, we're going to open it up to some questions. Hello, Natalie. How are you? And Michael, I'm looking forward to this session. Certainly after that presentation, for some exciting questions. So, can I open it up to anyone with any questions? You can't listen to those three presentations, not have a question, surely. Okay, somebody just over there. Yeah, thank you. I did have a few prepared, if not, so.
Hi, I'm Heather from ACOM. I have a question for Natalie. Fantastic work you're doing with the 5-day work week. I started off in construction and was often doing the 6:45 a.m. pre-starts and just couldn't see much of a future in that because daycare opened at 7:30. So I moved into consulting and I'm very happy with the move. Are you doing any research on the hours of work during the week?
Yeah, thanks so much for your question. It's interesting that you pose that question about work hours, and we are doing further studies. There's 6 further pilots, which include a rail project actually in Victoria, and they're looking at a 5-day work week. But I think you've sort of touched on something there, which is work hours specifically, and I think that if I'm pushed, that's and I hinted it in the presentation, that's sort of the next area I think that we need to be focusing on. Recently, we had a OECD report come out which looked at Australia as one of a number of international countries, and it echoed the research of ANU scholars that sort of found that the sweet spot for workers actually is about 39 hours per week, and if you have care responsibilities or you're an older worker, it drops to about 34 hours a week. So I think further studies, pilots have to be done. We have to be brave enough to challenge. At the moment, I think we're stepping into the 5-day work week, but we also have to be looking at work hours and how we schedule work differently. And I think that, we design and build really complex things, and yet I feel like there's a real reluctance and resistance in the past to sort of looking at how we've gone about it. So hopefully that shifts as well. But it definitely has an impact on women's participation in the sector, but also allowing men to be carers. And Project 5 really shone through for me. What really shone through for me was how important being a father was to many men and being active in their kids' lives. And that's not to say the 5-day work week wasn't popular. As I said, it was popular across all demographics. It really shone through for me how men's roles have changed as well as women's. And so, yeah, hopefully we can, if anybody is interested in looking at different ways of scheduling work and reducing work time in research, I'd be very interested to speak to you.
Thank you, Natalie. Really great question. Thank you. Any more questions from the floor? Jim Zeta.
Yeah, hi, Natalie. I'm assuming there was a reduction in take-home pay for some of the people who used to work 6 days a week to 5 days a week. How did they cope with that, and what impact did that have on people, especially the young people trying to pay off a mortgage and stuff like that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Well, obviously, on a vertical construction job, you've got white and blue collar workers. So white collar workers, weren't really penalised for working less time. And I will say as well that across the project, the average work hours, we were told by workers, white and blue, was about 7 hours per week. So it was under the 50-hour week line. But to your point, blue collar workers traditionally relied on, that cream of overtime, Saturday and Sunday work. And I guess what happened on Project 5 is the hours were reconfigured into working longer on Monday to Friday. And in New South Wales, that's double time rate, so it's the same as Saturday. And I guess to really cut to the point of the question is that workers actually really did a cost-benefit analysis in front of us when they were being interviewed. They told us that, some workers, and I think on a vertical job, one thing I've learned from this study is that there's different work practices amongst different trades or between different trades. So crane operators and structure workers generally work longer hours on a site, where trades like plumbers and services and really sort of protect their 40-hour week. So to answer your question, yes, there was a cost-benefit analysis underdone by individuals, but many of them, in some cases they said, well, I'm already paying the tax man by working a Saturday. And then others said, the value they gain from having that weekend off and spending it with their family or being able to go away on holidays, for instance, that was the trade-off that they were happy to make financially as well. So there was a cost to workers, some workers, but workers both chose to come onto this, some of them asked to come onto this job. And I was concerned that there would be a participant bias potentially. But I think what happened at the same time as this project was that when the CFMEU was negotiating their EBA agreements, they had other things on their agenda like fixed Monday RDO, but that sort of got pushed aside, and workers actually asked for a 5-day working week to be included in a number of their EBAs. So it sort of counterbalanced my fear about participant bias. So yes, to answer your question, there is that trade-off that the workforce, particularly the blue-collar workforce, have to make in terms of reducing their work hours to a point, and in order to have their weekends free.
Thank you, Natalie. Any further questions? Reggie? It's not going to be controversial, Reggie, is it?
Mildly controversial, yes. No, just a quick one. Around the working hours and things like that, obviously we work in the rail industry here, and our weekend works are quite fundamental to how we get things done. Is your organisation working with, say, MTM or with Sydney Trains or something like that to look at how they can reschedule their possession schedules so that we don't have to work weekends all the time?
Look, my organisation, I'm part of a research team. It's being led by the Construction Industry Culture Task Force, and it's studying 6 sites, all different types of construction projects. And as I said, one of them is a rail project, and I know there's a level crossing project as well in that. So I suspect that the flow and effect of this will be looking at and really critically analysing, those shutdown times and the effects it has on workers, and also productivity and cost, of course. But I think that's where future research lies, particularly in different types of construction, and where there are those sorts of constraints. I mean, in a building job, often you'll do a vertical building job, you'll shut the site when there's, come into the site when it's shut, or on weekends to do unsafe work, for instance, crane lifting, etc. So obviously Project 5 did allow for that, but I guess the key component for this study was that the client was deeply invested in understanding what a 5-day work week meant, and so they really constrained the contractor's ability to stop the job and to work on weekends, for instance. So yeah, watch this space is what I would suggest, and and hopefully more research in rail occurs in this area.
Thank you, Natalie. I certainly know it's an area that's certainly close to all our hearts. Any further questions? No. I want to ask Michael a question after this. It's just, I'm intrigued. Yeah.
Thank you. Samira Bandara, Artifacts. I've got a question for Kyle. That was an amazing presentation, Kyle, looking at the models and the digital engineering. I suppose it's amazing what technology can do these days. What I was curious about is there plans for extending those models beyond the project lifecycle and carry it across through to the asset lifecycle through life? I mean, there's going to be challenges, obviously, around config control, NV, et cetera, but it'll be interesting as to how useful those models can be beyond the project. And I suppose the second part is, other than geometry and visual, is there plans to expand the capability beyond that as well?
Is that working? I think it's on. Yep, sweet. Yeah, no, great question. In short, yeah, life cycle-wise, the models are now becoming, the way that we're developing models is evolving, and that, again, is being driven by the requirements from the client. that are nominating that, these models do have a use post handover, end of construction, moving into operation and maintenance. So they're getting a lot better in sort of dictating and telling us how those models need to be configured and what they need for those models to be effective, during that period and through its whole of life use. So yes, that is happening, and we're getting towards that. And a lot of the sort of you may hear it out in the industry, the talks around things like digital twins and the likes. That is essentially what that whole sort of move is sort of in response to, is wanting to use not just the model information, because I guess it's important to understand that, again, geometry is not the only thing. There's a huge amount of context and information in 2D data sets, that exist, that all come together to form, the asset model, I guess you would call, at the end of the day. So yeah, that's where we're going, and it's definitely happening.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Some more questions. They're all coming thick and fast.
Yes, just to Kyle. I think digital models are really good, and I think models development help a lot of people. But as an old person, I've seen lots of people who have provided models and created black boxes that they poke it, the information in the front, and deliver to you what comes out the other end. And I have seen those so horribly wrong, it is not funny. What sort of overarching tests and checks or systems do you build into your models that can adjust, and like having a senior engineer who's seen all of those things that says, that ain't going to work, even if he's only 5% out?
Another great question. I guess that's why
I'm smiling because I've asked him that in real life.
I guess the way that we bring it, that's why we try to get like our design management and construction teams involved from the very early inception of any content that we're designing or producing for a project. And so it enables them, and it's why we use cloud-based platforms to allow them to communicate as well, because it means all of those things, they can tell us, where they're seeing shortfalls and things early, and we can make more of a impact, and sort of try and head that off so that the model can sort of adjust over that, catch it early in design, and have it evolve in a more useful direction, I suppose, by the end of that period and moving through into construction. That's the sort of crux of what we're trying to do with those cloud-based tools, trying to bring all of that context together as early as possible and have the most amount of engagement there for as long as possible, I guess.
Thank you, Carl. Any other questions? We've got time for one more after this.
Yeah, Frank Johnson, currently employed by Retirement Unlimited. A question from Mike Hickey. I was just wondering why you picked on those poor signal engineers. Why not the mechanical or the electrical engineers?
The signal engineers offer a rich field. Pun intended.
We've got time for one more. Any more questions?
As a question for Mike, you talked about a lot of organisational changes within Railway in New South Wales, especially RSG, ISIS, you talked about IAS. Just a question on that, the AEO framework, TAO framework you've seen, AEO came in 2013. What's your thoughts on the value of AEO or TAO? Not all the other states have it. We all gone through a lot of the projects going through the TAO. Now the TAO used to be AEO framework, all the documentation, configuration management of the projects. Do you see any value having that framework?
Little bit of history. The ATO came about when more design work was put into the private industry. Previously, the governments virtually did all their own design work in-house. So they wanted some assurance that the private industry would do that appropriately. And I've been on both sides of the fence. And I've seen designs, for instance, for electrical overhead wiring to work in Sydney, which used 25 kV fittings. And they were supposedly signed off. So that's one of the reasons why the government put in that ATO process, to have confidence that when the designing was done, that it was done by competent people and they followed a process that could be audited.
Thank you. Ladies and gents, I'm going to have to bring that question session to an end. And I'd like to say thank you, Natalie, for dialing in. Sorry you couldn't be with us, but wow, a great presentation and great subject. So thank you very much. Mike and Kyle, you're going to stay on stage.